Hey, JJ here with the Art of Value. So today I want to talk about Micron Technology earnings out today, and yes, early earnings season again already. It seems like some companies were just reporting still last week, and I think they were. So it's sort of earnings are continuous these days. But anyway, Micron Technology is one of my biggest positions. This is not investment advice in any way. It's just entertainment information. Do your own due diligence, etc. But Micron Technology, as you can see, if you're on video on YouTube or Spotify or some of the other short forms, LinkedIn, Facebook, even Twitter, you'll see on the screen some of the so-called super investors who own Micron Technology. Up at the top of the list is Mohnish Pabrai and Li Lu, who, as we'll see in a video next, collaborated on the thesis for Micron Technology. Also, Guy Spear, who's a friend of Monhnish Pabrai. David Tepper from Appaloosa Management owns it. Some of these got big percentages. For Pabrai, it says 99%, but that's just the US portfolio. Of course, he's got a lot of other investments, say in India and Turkey and so forth. And Seth Klarman owns some of it. So, and Prem Watsa, these are big and famous value investing names who own Micron Technology. So what's the fuss about and how did they go? First of all, let's see what happened in earnings. I'm going to play this little clip. This is the headline, just the headline for earnings. It wasn't great. Wasn't a great headline. Let's have a see.
Well, here's our stock to watch for tomorrow. Micron Technology, the stock under pressure after hours after reporting earnings. But the big concern for investors is the company's outlook. Now, the company's seeing fourth quarter revenue coming in between 6.8 billion to 7.6 billion, well below its estimate of 9.14 billion. The company's CEO saying that the demand environment has weakened and that news did weigh on the rest of the semiconductor stocks this afternoon and after hours trading. You see the stock off just about 1%.
Okay, so yeah, the outlook. It was really to do with the outlook. Earnings were fine, but it was the outlook for the second quarter. Of course, there's lots of concerns about recession coming. Is it going to be a recession? Are we is the US in a recession already? And she mentioned after hours there. Let's just check the after hours number. So it's down 1.48% after hours. So not huge considering, we've had in the last few months, companies like Netflix and others coming out with earnings outlooks and the stock plummeting 25-30% even. Unbelievable. And so we'll see what happens tomorrow, but that's not too bad considering so far, even though the headlines are bad. But so what I wanted to talk about now was if we go back to actually, what I want to say before that is that I'm putting a 5-minute clip version of this up. This is going to run over 10 minutes. I've been putting these videos on LinkedIn and Facebook and even TikTok, which takes 10 minutes, which takes 10 minutes of video now, even Instagram, but I'm going to put a 5-minute clip up there probably. So if you're interested in seeing this link, which will go for more than 10 minutes, this video, sorry, click one of the links or find the full a link to the full podcast, which is not hard to find on numerous platforms, any podcasting platform that you use, including the video will be on Spotify and YouTube and elsewhere, as I said. All right, so I've got this is the, I mentioned that Mohnish Pabrai and Li Lu both own Micron Technology in a big way, and the thesis. Pabrai's actually explained his thesis for the company, Pabrai, he's a big cloner. I didn't clone the stock, but I was first alerted to it by the fact that he was buying it back in 2019, I think, like mid 2019, or maybe even the first quarter of 2019, maybe a bit later that he started buying that and. Turned out that Li Lu and it's been revealed recently through Pabrai himself that he and Li Lu collaborated on the thesis, which is very interesting. And in this first clip here, he's talking about how they both talked about it with Charlie Munger, both friends with Charlie Munger, Li Lu and Pabrai. Munger gave his kind of endorsement and his Pabro saying that it was good to get the endorsement of God. uh, and so actually this video, I'm going to leave a description to Pabro's YouTube channel. He has some great videos quite consistently over time, and so it's a great resource on YouTube. And so I got, but who's done the work? The Adventurous Investor. I believe his name is Neil from Australia. Australian. I don't know if he lives in Australia, but he's Australian, and he's pulled these clips from Pabrai and conveniently done it. So thanks. And so we'll just have see what Pabrai says. Listen to this.
Lou collaborated on Micron? I said, yeah. He said, the idea came from you. I said, yeah. He said, it will do very well. Okay, I said, it's great to have God give that kind of endorsement because I didn't get that in the insurance business from him.
Okay, so that's interesting talking about, well, I think that's fascinating that Munger gave his endorsement and that Li Lu and Pabrai and collaborated on it and thinks it will do very well. All right, so let's see what else. Next is the actual thesis that Pabrai has, or the short version of it that he put into video form, which explains it more succinctly than I could. Here we go. Let's see what Pabrai. Why was he interested in it as a stock, interested in the company?
This position we have is Micron Technology. It's in the memory business. And for the longest time, the memory business for decades was a terrible business. Boom and bust, too many players, someone innovates, cuts their cost in half. Now all your inventory the price of your inventory is above the selling price, and you're losing money while they're making money hands over fist till you catch up. And maybe you can catch up or maybe you don't. And it was all of that going on, Moore's law and, prices declining, till we hit a point where we were left with three players. And we got left with, I think, three rational players. And the game changed. Now, everyone saw that there were three players, but they had so much history and pain from the decades in the memory business that they refused to believe that anything was going to be different. And my thesis about 3-4 years ago was it's completely different. So the thing is that if you look at a Amazon data center, and if it costs them, 200 million or 100 million to put that up, about 30% of that is going to the memory guys.
Wow.
So it's a tax on all the streaming, all the e-commerce, all the shopping, on everything. 30% tax. I'm sitting collecting the tax.
It's a bit like Nvidia for the artificial intelligent blockchain game. No matter where the future goes, you need an Nvidia graphics card to run it, right?
Yeah. And so I think the thing is that now, it's in an industry with rapid change. So we'll see. The thesis is still playing out. We will see how it works. But I like the, upside downside scenario.
Lilu and I became great friends.
All right, okay. So he's explained it there very well. That part of it is that let me say that what he didn't say there is, he might have said it, is that the industry's the company's been very cyclical over time. So part of the thesis being that it's becoming less cyclical as memories used more and more. And he didn't mention autonomous driving. There's 5G. But he mentioned the tax on everything, like Amazon, and there's so much memory used. They're going to be, and more. So it's got great tailwinds, and less cyclical and consolidating. So there are fewer players in the sector, and so Micron's got some good tailwinds. As I said, not investment advice. That's Pabrai's thoughts. I own the stock, but that's not investment advice. So let's go to earnings. Let's start on the earnings. And so we've got, just let me I mean, I looked at this, just a general thing of the one of the sites, a very good site that I use for aimed at value investors, is basically saying it's down. It's undervalued by 30% right now. So yes, I mean, if we look at the actual stock over the year, it's down 42% for the year, and down for 1 year, down 31%. Over the 5-year period, it's up 83, and but over time, since way back, it's not a new company, since the 80s, it's up 3,822%. So the general, you know, over the long term, it's done very well. But see how, if you can see on video how cyclical it's been, so some huge spikes. Of course, it was involved in the tech bubble in 2000, huge spike, and so it went way down, and it was low as $2, less than $2, back in 2008. So as Pabrai said, things have got better since then. So 2014 was a spike, and then it went way down to $12. The spike was up to $30. So hugely volatile and cyclical, and you can see that in the earnings too, cyclical earnings over time. And then 2018, the high was 60, and of course down in even in the same, in early 2019, it was down as low as 32. And so I think that Pabrai mentioned 3 or 4 years ago, didn't he? So around this time, he probably might have been looking at it and started, I think his, I remember thinking in the 30s and 40s he was buying, might be wrong there. And so, I mean, I was interested back then too, started buying it up. So I'm still up, but it's down, it went as high as, was it 100 or something? I remember thinking during that exuberant time, 93, and so now it's down to 50, down to 55. Could go lower. Well, it's going to tomorrow, probably. And so now, so I'm looking at this here. Micron earnings reveal dismal outlook for semiconductor market. So that's another headline. This is from today. The chip maker posted all-round beats for this quarter, but guidance suggests near-term pain. You emphasize near-term. So the finance media, like we had Yahoo there. The headlines are always focused on the next quarter rather than 5 or 10 years down the track. So Micron Technology released earnings results for its third quarter of fiscal 2022 on Thursday after the market closed. Investors have been looking forward to the report because Micron's May ending quarter provides an extra month of data about the semiconductor market, which is experiencing a period of volatility. What isn't experiencing a period of volatility in tech? We last got an update on the market from NVIDIA for its April end quarter, which revealed negative effects from COVID-related factory shutdowns in China, as well as the war in Ukraine. In addition to these micro factors, analysts have also been noting signs the semiconductors were overbought in 2021, and as companies sought to hoard them amid the fear of shortages. Remember that, the chip shortages. Tesla was in the news about that, chip shortages everywhere because of supply chain and shutdowns and so forth. On the positive side, the article says, Micron beat analyst estimates on both its top and bottom lines for the quarter. However, the outlook has investors concerned that near-term pain could be in the cards, not just for Micron, but for the semiconductor industry as a whole. And then it goes through the numbers. Analysts polled by FactSet had called for Micron to deliver adjusted earnings of $2.43 on revenue of $8.64 billion. Micron surprised to the upside and adjusted earnings per share of $2.59 and revenue of $8.64 billion. These numbers also compared favorably to earnings per share, blah, blah, blah. Okay, let's have a look. Gross margin of 46.7% and the operating margin of 36.4%, which is good. But both of which marked improvements of approximately 5% compared to a year ago. And so okay, it's really about the outlook. I'm going to focus on the outlook because that's really why the stock will be going down, and everybody's concerned about a recession coming. Elon Musk saying he's got a very bad feeling, blah blah, and so everybody's concerned about that. So this earnings quarter is going to be very interesting for company outlooks, not necessarily the quarter that's just been, but what's coming up in the next few quarters. So it says, despite the news for the quarter ending, Micron's outlook for the next quarter was lower than analysts were expecting. The stock initially dipped in after hours, though it soon recovered. Okay, we've seen that. For its fourth quarter fiscal 22, Micron calls for a revenue of 7.2 billion, plus or minus 400 million. Even at the top end of its estimates, it falls far below the 9.05 billion that analysts had been hoping to see, and it would mark a year-on-year decline for the company's revenue of 8.2 billion in the fourth quarter. So, this is what's interesting about the company having a history of being cyclical, and are we cyclical again, or how cyclical, and is there a recession coming? So there's that to weigh up. The company anticipates adjusted earnings per share. We don't need to go into adjusted earnings per share. Micron noted in its earnings presentation that near the end of its fiscal third quarter, it saw a significant reduction in near-term industry bit demand, mostly from weakness in consumer markets, including PC and smartphone. Okay. All right, we'll go on to the actual company. So that's looking at articles, right? Actually, we'll look at one more thing that I caught my eye that was published today about Li Lu owning MU, which always interests me. Let's just see. Micron Technology. So it talks about this in relation to Li Lu, I think. Himalaya Capital. Yes, that's Li Lu's fund company. Owns nearly 11.5 million shares of Micron, giving the position a 37.57% equity portfolio weight. Well, we don't know if that's true because he may own stocks in international stocks, including China, that we don't know about. Shares of Micron traded around 55 point blah blah. We don't need to know the stock price. The stock trades approximately 3.51 above its 52-week low. Okay, so it's at around the 52-week low. The Boise, Idaho Idaho-based semiconductor company has a GF score of 7.7. This is Guru Focus, so we won't go into that. Actually, it doesn't give us much information there, but it's interesting that its outlook. Talking about its outlook is the main thing. So we've got from the company now. The company itself is fine to look at media reports, but so it had actual results. Multiple end market and product revenue records reflect broad portfolio momentum, the company says, and revenue of 8.64 billion versus 7.78 billion for the prior quarter and 7.74 billion for the same period last year. So compared to last year, which was 7.42, and now it's 8.46. So good result. GAAP net income of 2.63 billion, and what else? Operating cash flow of 3.84 billion versus 3.63 billion for the prior quarter and 3.56 billion for the period last year. So it's had a good quarter. I mean, can't really ask for much more than that. And we've got gross margins are good, 46.7%, 47.2 last time, 42. So strong margins. And here we go, outlook. I'm actually going to, as I said, focus on the outlook. So revenue of 7.2 billion, and okay, and then it talks about the webcast, the earnings call webcast. So I'm going to listen to that. I haven't done that yet. This is just me kind of a first look. If there's any interest in this video or podcast about Micron, I might talk about the earnings call too. but I don't expect it to be huge interest in it. And so what I'm going to do here, there's a new presentation to look at, which I haven't gone through yet, but just in their notes here, I'm going to do a search for Outlook and see if we can get more detail on what they say, because people are most interested in that. So I'm going to do a search for the word Outlook. And we have, so there are consumer demand and inventory related headwinds impacting the industry and consequently the fiscal Q4 outlook. However, we remain confident about the secular demand for memory and storage, the attractiveness of our market opportunity, Micron's excellent competitive position and strong execution capabilities and cross-cycle financial model. Okay, so, good long thing. Talking about the tailwinds there, basically, of the industry and Micron itself, things that Pabrai was talking about. So down further, market outlook. Turning to the market outlook, our expectations for calendar 22 industry bit demand growth have moderated since our last earnings call. Near the end of fiscal Q3, we saw a significant reduction in near-term industry bit demand, primarily attributable to end demand weakness in consumer markets, including PC and smartphone. These consumer markets have been impacted by the weakness in consumer spending in China, the Russia-Ukraine war, and rising inflation around the world. Well, that's talking about PC and smartphone. That's going to be interesting for Apple. It's going to be Apple results report. When they report, it's going to be interesting. Can you imagine? I can imagine that the Apple stock price will take a beating if there's any significant weakness in iPhone sales, because every quarter they've just hit the mark. But anyway, this one's about Micron, not Apple. COVID-19 control measures in China have exacerbated supply chain challenges for some customers, and the macroeconomic environment is also creating some caution among certain customers. Several customers, primarily in PC and smartphone, are adjusting to inventories. And we expect these adjustments to take place mostly in the second half of calendar 2022. Oh, it's going to be interesting that they talk about customers and smartphones. So, interesting to see what happens to Apple stock price tomorrow, actually. While end demand in the mobile, PC, and consumer markets have weakened, cloud, networking, automotive, and industrial markets are showing resilience. Okay, cloud, networking, automotive, and industrial markets. So, automotive being, EVs ramping up, that's not going to stop. Industrial markets, clouds, strong networking, yep, makes sense. Due to weaker demand in the second half of calendar 22, we now expect year-on-year calendar 22 industry bit demand growth to be below the long-term CAGRs of its compound annual growth rates of mid to high teens percentage for DRAM and high 20s percentage for NAND. Despite the near-term weakness, secular demand trends remain strong, and our view of long-term DRAM and NAND bit demand CAGR remains unchanged from our prior expectations. So, the outlook isn't too bad at all long-term. Turning to supply, given the change in market conditions, we are taking immediate action to reduce our supply growth trajectory to project profitability. We maintain pricing discipline, manage capacity utilization, and use inventory as a buffer to navigate through the period of demand weakness. Okay, demand weakness. Additionally, we are planning for a reduced level of bit supply growth for fiscal 2023, and will use inventory to supply part of the market demand next year. The approach will enable us to reduce wafer fab equipment capex, so that's wafer fabrication capital expenditure for fiscal year 2023 versus our prior plans, and we now expect our fiscal 2023 wafer fab equipment capex to decline year over year. All right. Overall industry supply is also being impacted. Manufacturing equipment, shipping delays, challenges for some of the industry in ramping new nodes of technology and DRAM, supply discipline evident in the industry and all expected to limit supply growth for the next few quarters. These supply reductions will be help offset with impact of the weaker demand, offset some impact of the weaker demand. So this is from the earnings call, actually. And now I turn to Mark Murphy, Micron's Chief Financial Officer. So I'm going to listen to the call. That was all interesting in terms of their outlook. And they talk about outlook a bit more, but I think that's all for now. In closing, let's see what they say in closing. In closing, we deliver strong results for fiscal Q3, but near-term headwinds are impacting our fiscal Q4 outlook. Beyond the near term, we project secular growth drivers such as data center, automotive, and other areas to support robust DRAM and NAND growth and strong cross-cycle financial performance by Micron. At our Investor Day event last month, we laid out a cross-cycle financial model for the company that reflects the key attributes of our business: a strong revenue growth CAGR and high single-digit robust cross-cycle operating margins of approximately 30%, which was higher than this quarter. They did better than that. The healthy free cash flow margins that exceed 10% of revenues. Given our long-term financial outlook and the strength of our balance sheet, we see the current share price as very attractive at these levels. Intend to repurchase shares more aggressively in Q4. Okay, interesting. So they're doing more share buybacks, continuing. They think the share price is good. Like to see when the share price is low, not when it's high. Management knows what they're doing if they're buying it low. So the outlook's good. So, you got to look deeper than the headlines, and the thesis for me hasn't changed, and I didn't expect it to. But we could be in for a recession. We have to keep that in mind, and everything will get hit. And I'm actually been waiting for this because of the thesis of being less cyclical. Okay, so what happens during a recession, and if it's a severe recession, let's see how it goes. It's going to be interesting for the long term. All right, that's all I'm going to say for now, because it's usually longer than the usual 10 minutes, and but sometimes I want to dig much deeper, and I'm going to listen to the earnings call. And if there's more than usual interest on this, I might dig into it even more. Well, I will in future anyway, because as I said, it's one of my life's positions, so I keep up with it. And so if you've got any value out of this, like and subscribe, follow wherever you can in your podcast platforms, and follow me on Twitter @TheArtOfValue. All right, see you next time.